Ava and Daniel had been inseparable since college, a pair bound by an unbreakable friendship forged through late-night study sessions, shared playlists, and endless inside jokes. They were the kind of friends everyone expected to end up together, but they both fiercely denied it. "It's just a friendship," Ava would laugh when her friends teased her. And in her heart, she believed it. Daniel was her confidant, her partner in crime, nothing more. One autumn night after an exhausting work week, Daniel invited Ava over for a movie night. It was routine for them: popcorn, pajamas, and an unspoken pact to watch something they could both poke fun at. But tonight felt different. There was an uncharacteristic energy in the air, a quiet tension they both seemed to notice but neither dared to acknowledge. Halfway through the movie, during a particularly heart-wrenching scene, Daniel looked at Ava. Her eyes were misty, focused intently on the screen, and he found himself captivated. It was as though he was seeing her for the first time. In a moment he couldn't explain or take back, he leaned over and kissed her, a gentle, tentative kiss that was over almost as soon as it had begun. Ava's heart stopped, her mind racing, trying to understand what had just happened. They pulled apart, wide-eyed, staring at each other in stunned silence. "Did we just?" Ava whispered, barely able to get the words out. Daniel swallowed, looking just as dazed. I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me." They sat in silence, neither knowing what to say, both unwilling to confront the truth lurking behind that impulsive moment. Their friendship suddenly felt fragile, like a glass balancing on the edge of a table, ready to shatter at the slightest touch. And though neither said it, they both felt a pang of fear, realizing that everything between them had just changed. Over the next few days, Ava tried to act like nothing had happened. She avoided Daniel, dodging his calls and messages, telling herself she needed time to think. But even in the silence, the memory of that kiss lingered, haunting her. She couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, it had felt right. After a week of distance, Daniel finally showed up at her apartment, looking tired, a mixture of sadness and determination in his eyes. "Ava," he started, voice barely a whisper, "we need to talk." Ava let him in, her heart pounding as they sat across from each other. The air was thick with tension, and she could feel herself unraveling, the walls she'd built around their friendship beginning to crumble. "About the other night?" Daniel began, hesitating. "I'm sorry if I crossed a line. I can't stop thinking about it. About us." Ava's heart twisted. She felt the truth she'd been avoiding, the longing she had been too scared to admit to herself. She looked down, feeling vulnerable, her voice barely a murmur. "Daniel, I don't know if we're ready for this. What if we lose what we have?" He reached across the table, taking her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "I know," he whispered. "I'm scared too, but I can't keep pretending that what I feel for you is just friendship. I've tried, Ava. I tried to ignore it, but it's there." They sat in silence, her hand in his, their gazes locked. She knew that if she took this step, there would be no going back. They would risk everything, years of friendship, countless memories. But as she looked into his eyes, she felt something she couldn't deny, a quiet yearning that had always been there, just hidden beneath the surface. Ava took a deep breath, her heart racing as she finally let herself speak the words she had been too afraid to say. "Daniel, I feel it too. I've been so scared to ruin what we have, but maybe it's worth it." For the first time in years, they let themselves be vulnerable, admitting to feelings they had both buried for so long. The night was filled with laughter and tears as they talked until dawn, opening up about the countless little moments they had each brushed aside, the hidden glances, the moments of jealousy they had never dared to acknowledge. But love, as they soon learned, was not as simple as a confession. The transition from friends to lovers was awkward, tangled in expectations and fear. They stumbled, unsure how to navigate the shift, finding themselves tiptoeing around each other, afraid to say the wrong thing, afraid to do something that might remind them too painfully of what they were risking. There were days they clashed, unable to reconcile their friendship with the new boundaries of a romantic relationship. Moments of doubt crept in, and it became clear that love wasn't always easy or romantic. It was messy and often painful. One night, in the midst of an argument over something trivial, Ava found herself questioning everything. She looked at Daniel, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "Maybe we weren't meant for this. Maybe we should have just stayed friends." Daniel's face fell, a flash of pain in his gaze. "Is that really what you want?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Instead, she looked away, a lump forming in her throat as the weight of her own doubts threatened to overwhelm her. For days after, they gave each other space, both wondering if they had made a mistake. But during the time apart, Ava realized something. She missed him, not just as her best friend, but as the man she had come to love. The loneliness she felt wasn't just the absence of a friend, it was the ache of having pushed away someone who had come to mean everything to her. When they finally met again, they both felt the fragile nature of their relationship. But as they looked at each other, a silent understanding passed between them. They were not the same as they had been as friends, and maybe that was okay. They had found love, even if it was complicated, even if it was full of uncertainties. In the weeks and months that followed, they learned to accept each other's flaws and fears. They rebuilt their foundation, not as best friends, but as partners who had loved and hurt and come back to each other despite it all. They realized that sometimes love was born out of friendship, not in a perfect, seamless transition, but through pain, struggle, and the courage to face the unknown. And as they stood side by side, watching the sun rise over the city one early morning, they knew they had made the right choice. They had transformed their friendship into something more, something they were both ready to cherish, no matter how difficult the journey had been. As the seasons turned, Ava and Daniel settled into a bittersweet rhythm, two people tethered by years of friendship, but haunted by the ghost of something more. They tried to pretend everything was normal, meeting for coffee, texting as if nothing had happened, but the spaces between them felt wider, the laughter softer, the silences longer. Ava tried to move forward. She poured herself into work, joined new groups, and even forced herself to go on a few dates. But each person she met felt like a shadow compared to Daniel. There were times she'd catch herself reaching for her phone to text him about a funny memory, a new song, or a stressful moment, only to pause, her heart sinking as she realized that part of her life was different now. The unspoken line between them was heavier than she ever imagined. Meanwhile, Daniel was going through his own struggles. Friends encouraged him to get back out there, but no one seemed to understand that Ava had been his person, the one who knew him at his worst and his best, the one who could read his thoughts with a single glance. He found himself lost in their shared memories, reliving moments that now felt painfully distant. His days felt incomplete, as if he'd left a part of himself with her that he couldn't recover. One night, Ava found herself unable to sleep, her mind drifting back to the early days of their friendship, to the laughter and warmth that had been so effortless. She thought of that first accidental kiss, the moment they both realized they were teetering on the edge of something profound and terrifying. And for the first time in months, she let herself feel it all, the longing, the loss, and the empty ache that had taken root in her heart. In the weeks that followed, she noticed Daniel more often at their usual haunts, sitting alone, nursing a coffee, and lost in thought. She'd keep her distance, watching from afar, wondering if he felt the same emptiness. A part of her wanted to approach him, to close the gap and try again, but she was paralyzed by the fear that they'd only end up hurting each other more. One gray afternoon, they crossed paths at a bookstore they used to visit together. Both stopped, surprised, and stood there, a quiet sadness flickering in their eyes. Finally, Daniel broke the silence, his voice soft. "How are you?" Getting by, Ava replied, offering a faint smile. She wanted to say more, to tell him how she missed their late-night talks, how her days felt hollow without him, but the words stuck in her throat. They shared an awkward hug, both holding on just a second too long, and it felt like stepping back into the warmth of a long-forgotten dream. For a moment, everything felt like it used to, and Ava's heart ached with the weight of their lost love. A few days later, Daniel texted her unexpectedly. Ava's heart leapt, and she agreed, her nerves tingling with a mix of excitement and fear. They chose a quiet spot by the lake, somewhere they used to go often in college. The drive there was filled with easy conversation, as if the months of tension had fallen away, leaving them both free to be themselves. As they sat by the water, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Daniel reached for her hand, his voice filled with emotion. "Ava, I know we tried. I know we said we'd be just friends, but I don't know if I can let go of you. I tried and nothing feels right without you." Ava's eyes filled with tears, her heart pounding as she whispered, "I feel the same. It's like a part of me is missing without you. But what if we hurt each other again?" He looked at her, his gaze steady. "We probably will, but I'd rather take the risk and have you in my life than live every day knowing we could have tried and didn't." They sat in silence, the world around them falling away, leaving only the two of them bound by a love that had been tested and scarred, yet remained fierce and undeniable. Ava felt a weight lift from her heart, a quiet peace settling within her. She knew it wouldn't be easy. Love was messy, fragile, and often painful. But this time, they were ready to face it all, together. In that moment, they made a silent promise to each other, not that everything would be perfect, but that they would stay by each other's side, weathering the storms and embracing the joy that love could bring. As they left the lake, hand in hand, they felt the weight of the past slowly slipping away, leaving them free to start a new chapter, stronger than ever before. As the night unfolded, Ava and Daniel found themselves delving deeper into the moments that had connected them, each story and laugh pulling them closer as the hours slipped by unnoticed. They reminisced about their shared memories, each chapter of their friendship coming alive between shared glances and whispered laughs. But amid the warmth and nostalgia, there was an undeniable tension in the air, a spark that had been flickering quietly for years, now burning brighter and more insistently than ever before. Daniel looked at Ava with a gaze so intense it made her heart race. "Ava," he murmured, taking her hand gently, "do you remember that night by the lake years ago when we almost kissed? I wanted to tell you then, but I couldn't bring myself to risk everything." His eyes held a mix of regret and longing. "I've been thinking about it ever since." Ava's face softened, her own heart aching as she remembered that night too, the moment she'd tucked her feelings away, too scared to reveal the truth. "I remember," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I was afraid too. Afraid I'd lose you if I said anything." Their hands tightened around each other's, the silence around them filled with all the unsaid words and unspoken desires that had lingered for years. The emotions between them felt almost too powerful to contain, raw and exposed as they faced the truth of all they had hidden. Daniel took a shaky breath and finally let down the last of his walls. "Ava, I can't imagine my life without you. And I don't want to keep pretending we're just friends when I've loved you this whole time." His voice cracked as he spoke, the vulnerability in his eyes making her own heart ache. The words struck something deep within her, emotions she had suppressed for so long flooding to the surface. She looked up at him, her heart pounding as she felt the truth in his confession resonate with her own. "Daniel," she whispered, "I don't want to be without you either. I'm tired of holding back. I want us to have our chance, no matter what." With those words, it felt as if a weight had lifted from both of them, the years of hesitation and doubt finally fading away. In that instant, their fears melted, and they shared a kiss, one that carried the weight of years of longing, a kiss that spoke of all the moments they had held back, too scared to take that leap. For the next few months, they reveled in their newfound love, exploring each other in ways they had never dared to before. The boundaries of friendship had dissolved, entirely replaced by a romance that felt as though it had always been there, waiting for them to realize it. They were inseparable, spending days and nights together, sharing dreams and building new memories with the eagerness of two people who had found something rare and precious. But as the months passed, life began to throw challenges their way. The intense emotions they shared, once so beautiful and exhilarating, became sources of tension. They struggled with balancing the intimacy they had gained with the friendship they had once relied on, each misunderstanding and argument chipping away at their perfect facade. One day, a particularly heated argument left Ava feeling broken and uncertain. She couldn't understand how they had gone from the pure joy of rediscovering each other to the exhausting challenges that had begun to wear them down. She wondered if their friendship was truly strong enough to support the weight of a relationship. One evening, after a tense silence, Daniel admitted, "Sometimes I'm afraid we made a mistake, that maybe we were supposed to stay just friends." His words stung, cutting deeper than he realized. Ava's face fell, her heart twisting painfully. "Are you saying we should have never tried?" Her voice wavered, her emotions raw and exposed. He shook his head, his own heart aching as he saw the pain in her eyes. "No, I'm just scared, Ava. This love is so intense and I don't want to lose you. But every time we argue, it feels like we're tearing down something we spent years building." Ava swallowed hard, her throat tight as tears filled her eyes. "I feel the same way. But maybe love isn't supposed to be easy. Maybe it's supposed to challenge us, to make us stronger together." In that quiet moment, they realized that their love wasn't meant to be simple. It was the kind of love that tested them, a love that required them to face their insecurities and fears head-on. They made a promise that night, holding each other close as they vowed to fight for their love, even when things got hard. The months that followed were a testament to their resilience. They learned to communicate in new ways, to let down their guards and embrace the messy, imperfect reality of love. Their bond grew deeper, richer, and more profound as they weathered life's challenges together. Each struggle became a building block, every argument a lesson in patience and understanding. And in the end, their love became something more than either had ever imagined. It was a love that had withstood the tests of time, distance, and hardship. It was a love that had transformed them, bringing out the best and bravest parts of who they were. Ava and Daniel had found in each other not just a lover, but a partner, a best friend, and the greatest love of their lives. Looking back on their journey, they both knew that they would do it all over again. The heartache, the challenges, the fears, because every step had led them to this moment, to the life they had built together, to a love that was worth fighting for every single day. As they faced the raw honesty of that moment, Ava and Daniel realized their journey was only beginning. The love they shared was not the serene, predictable kind. No, theirs was turbulent, fierce, a love that felt almost alive in its intensity. It had brought them together, burned them with passion, and tested their very cores. They had survived the uncertainty of crossing from friends to lovers, only to discover the depths of their connection ran far deeper than either had ever imagined. The days that followed were transformative. They poured their hearts into building something that would last, something that would transcend the wounds they had suffered along the way. But this new chapter came with unforeseen challenges, pressures from work, dreams they each wanted to chase, even their own insecurities that crept up in unexpected ways. Yet every night, they returned to each other, choosing each other all over again. One evening, just as the last winter snow was melting, Daniel surprised Ava with a spontaneous getaway. He had rented a secluded cabin in the mountains where the silence felt timeless, the perfect setting for their growing bond. There, they found themselves falling into conversations that went even deeper than before, exploring each other's fears, vulnerabilities, and dreams. Ava shared her childhood memories, her insecurities, and dreams she had buried long ago. Daniel, too, opened up about his past, revealing a side of himself he had never shown anyone. Their love was transforming, turning them into versions of themselves they barely recognized. But it wasn't just peaceful, it was exhilarating. They cooked together, danced by the fireplace, and held each other close through the quiet nights. In the arms of the mountains, with snow-capped peaks as witnesses, they made promises that felt as timeless as the stars. But just as things were beginning to feel perfect, fate threw another curveball. On their last night at the cabin, Daniel received an urgent call, an opportunity to advance his career that required him to move across the country. The news landed like a storm cloud, darkening the blissful moments they had shared. The move would mean distance, sacrifice, and uncertainty. And Ava was faced with an agonizing decision. Should she follow him and leave her life behind, or should they brave the unknown and risk a long-distance relationship? The next morning, Ava sat on the porch, watching the sunrise, her mind racing. She felt Daniel's presence beside her as he took her hand. His voice was barely a whisper as he confessed, "I want you with me, Ava, but I can't ask you to leave everything. I know this is hard, and I'm scared too." She squeezed his hand, her heart aching. "Daniel, love like this, it doesn't come around often. I'm scared of losing what we've found, but I'm even more afraid of losing myself in the process. I need time to think about this, about us." Over the next few days, they navigated the tension of not knowing what lay ahead. Ava knew she couldn't make this choice on impulse. She needed to be sure. She returned to the city while Daniel left to explore the opportunity, each of them trying to find clarity, trying to understand what mattered most. They spent days apart, wrestling with emotions, fears, and dreams. It felt like a cruel test, like fate was pushing them to see if their love was strong enough to survive even the most wrenching challenges. After weeks of searching her soul, Ava finally realized that love wasn't about finding someone to complete her, but about finding someone who could walk beside her on her journey. She needed to be true to herself and her dreams, and that meant finding a way to balance her love for Daniel with her own ambitions. One rainy evening, they met back at the lake, the place where everything had changed. Ava stood there, her heart pounding as Daniel approached, his eyes filled with a mix of hope and trepidation. She took a deep breath, her voice steady but full of emotion. "Daniel, I want us to have everything we dreamed of, but I need to know we can love each other without losing ourselves," she began, her eyes meeting his. "I've realized that no matter where we are, I want us to keep growing, keep supporting each other. If that means some time apart, then I believe we can make it work, because I know now that I'll never stop loving you." Daniel reached for her, pulling her close, his voice breaking as he whispered, "I would wait forever, Ava, if it means we'll find our way back to each other. You're my heart, my home, and whatever it takes, I'm willing to do it." Their embrace felt like a promise, a vow that no distance or time could sever. And so they parted once more, but this time with a deep-seated faith that no matter where life took them, they would always find their way back. Their love, tested by fire and strengthened through trials, had become the unshakable foundation of their lives. Years later, as they stood together on the same lake's shore, their faces aged but their hearts as connected as ever, they knew that every hardship, every tear, every moment of doubt had been worth it. Their journey was never easy, but it was their own. A story of love that defied distance, a love that grew stronger because they dared to let it be true to who they were.